There's a prophecy in the Jewish Talmud that giants and Nephilim actually return before the Messiah comes, and not only in the Talmud, but there's hints of this in the Bible as well. Now, the Talmud is the central text of rabbinical Judaism and the primary source of Jewish religious law and Jewish theology. The Talmud has always been a centerpiece for Jewish cultural life and foundational to Jewish people for their thoughts and aspirations and their guides to their daily lives. The term Talmud normally refers to the collection of writings named specifically the Babylonian Talmud, although there's also an earlier collection known as the Jerusalem Talmud. The Talmud is the basis for all codes of Jewish law and is widely quoted in rabbinical literature. I came across a very interesting article talking about giants and Nephilim returning before the Messiah, and I'll read a little bit from that right now. The article's from 2015 and it's titled "No Fairy Tale, Will Giants Return to Usher in the Messianic Era?" Within it, it says, the Babylonian Talmud relates that Sihon and Og, two kings mentioned later in the Bible, were descendants of the angel Shemshazi. The Midrash, which is also other Jewish literature, states that Og was alive in the time of Noah, but escaped the flood by clinging to the side of the ark. In Genesis 14:13, a fugitive comes to tell Abram about Lot's capture. Og was named in Deuteronomy 3:11 as the only remaining man from the Rephaim, a biblical race of giants, and his bed was described as being enormous and made entirely of iron. The Midrashic sources explain that Enoch was Og, one of the descendants of the Nephilim, and the fugitive from the flood. Another Midrash tells how Og attacked the Jews in the desert and Moses killed them. There's a connection between the reappearance of these giants and the coming of the Messiah. In the Talmud Sanhedrin 97a, there's a discussion between Rav Nachman and Rav Yitzchak. Rav Yitzchak asks, "Do you know when Bar Naphtali, the sons of the fallen, will come?" Rav Yitzchak asks, "Who are the Bar Naphtali?" Rav Nachman answered, "It is Messiah." The Talmud goes on to describe the difficult times preceding the Messiah. This section of the Talmud also explains that the Messiah will come the year after a sabbatical cycle is completed. Bar Naphtali in the Talmud clearly refers to specific people who both Rav Yitzchak and Rav Nachman have heard of, and who Rav Nachman connects with the coming of the Messiah. The Hebrew word nafal translates as fall, but here in the Talmud, the word naphil is in Aramaic. In the language of the Talmud, Naphtali means giant. By the discussion in the Talmud, it seems clear that these Bar Naphtali giants will return in time to usher in the Messiah. The Jewish people sadly don't believe that Jesus was the fulfillment of the Messiah, something that we should be praying for them to see. But they believe that the Messianic Age is right around the corner. They believe we're actually living in it right now. And this article that just came out on April 30th says we are in the time of the Messiah now, the ancestry of the Messiah in Jewish sources. Within this article, it says, "We understand that in every generation there's a potential Messiah," Rabbi Plavanov explained. "If the people merit it and the conditions are right, the Messiah of that generation will manifest. This is true of King Hezekiah, who came very close to being the Messiah. Samson was a potential Mashiach of his generation. This is first brought down in the Midrash, Bereshit Rabbah 98:14, a Jewish literature text." This article ends saying, quote, "According to Kabbalah, King David was precisely the middle point of human history," Rabbi Plavanov said. "From Adam to David is precisely the same amount of time as it has been since King David until now. So we are literally in the time of Moshiach right now." Now, not just the Talmud prophesies that giants and Nephilim are returning in the end times, but the Bible alludes to it as well. In Isaiah 13:3, in the Brenton Septuagint translation, it says, "I give command and I bring them. Giants are coming to fulfill my wrath, rejoicing at the same time and insulting." We also know in Luke 17, in verses 26 through 30, Jesus gives us an overview of what it'll be like in the end times. And he says in verse 26, "And as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be also in the days of the Son of Man." In verse 27, he references how at that time Noah had to enter the ark and the flood came and destroyed everyone else. In verse 28, he says, "Likewise as it was also in the days of Lot." And then in verses 29 and 30, he says, "But on that day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even so it will be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed." And so what was going on in the days of Noah and in the days of Lot? Well, the flood had to come to wipe off the Nephilim and their race of giants from the earth. That's why the flood came. We also know in the story of Lot escaping Sodom and Gomorrah that Sodom was so wicked and they actually went to Lot's house because two angels were there, and the people of the town of Sodom were trying to break into Lot's house to have sexual relations with the two angels that were there. Something that when we go back, of course, to Genesis 6:4, knowing that angels and human beings, the women, had sexual relations, and that's what created the giants in the first place. An interesting side note about the days of Noah and the days of Lot, and Jesus saying that that's how it will be when the Son of Man returns, something I heard recently is that in both of those stories, the faithful followers of God were delivered from the destruction and judgment that came upon the earth. I recently heard someone use that as an argument for the rapture being before the tribulation, which is something I found pretty interesting. Haven't heard that before. What we know for sure is that the people of God and the followers of God, all of them, whether saved before, during the tribulation, or any time, will be taken out of the earth before the wrath of God. So it could absolutely maybe be in reference to that as well. What role giants and Nephilim play in the end times, we don't really have the full picture. But what we do know is that the end times will be scary and it will be fearful times for the people who are on the earth. What we know in Luke 21:26, it says, men's hearts failing them from fear and the expectation of those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. One more verse that may reference the Nephilim coming back to the earth in the end times is in Daniel 2, verse 43. This passage is talking about the Antichrist's empire and what it will look like with the kingdoms of the earth at that time. And in verse 43, it says, as you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. That reference to whomever they are mingling with the seed of men and it not adhering to one another sounds similar to the passage of Genesis 6:4, where we know fallen angels mated with earth women and created the giants. In the last days, hard things will be going on, especially in the last of the last days when God's judgments are poured out on the earth. I mean, sights will be so fearful, men's hearts will be failing them. But we can know because of this, this is the reason to give your life to Jesus, to the Son of Man, because just like he delivered Noah from the flood, he wants to deliver you as well. So no matter what the role is of Nephilim and giants in the end times, or exactly how these fearful sights will all come upon the earth, how and when, is not as important as giving your life to Jesus and living for him. So I pray that you're living in obedience and intimacy with him and seeking him daily and keeping him first above everything else in your life. If you do those three things, you will be directed in an amazing way in an incredible relationship with God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and God bless.